Hello and welcome to Moja Kuchnia, my kitchen. I'm Sam and today's video is going to be for the dogs. We're making homemade dog biscuits. Why make your own biscuits when they're inexpensive and easy to buy? Because we can control what goes into them. We can control the quality of the ingredients we do put in them. And with all the recalls we've been having lately, might be worth a little extra, and it's a super simple, super easy recipe. You need very few tools for it, and there are a lot of varieties that you can make to this recipe. So first, let's go over what tools we need. We need our trusty bowl, a sifter, measuring cups and measuring spoons, our hot pads. We're going to need a rolling pin. Now this is a French style rolling pin. It's actually a kid's size because I have very small hands. You can get a marble one. You can get a plastic one. You can get a old-fashioned wooden one. Don't dip them in water. You can get rust in the handles. I like a heavier one for a heavier dough. This one for all other doughs, it's just a lot easier for me to use it. Wax paper if you don't want to roll out dough on your counter. You can put a piece of wax paper under your dough and over your dough. I'm going to roll it out directly on my counter because I clean my counters with a vinegar and water solution, a cleaning strength vinegar and water solution that's 100% food safe for animals, for people, for pretty much anything. It's what we use in the commercial kitchen, and that way I can wash down this counter, give it a few to air dry, and I can roll the dough right out on it, and I don't have to worry about any kind of chemicals being on there. We're going to need our gloves again. Remember, if the food is not just for your household, make sure you cover your hands when you touch them after they come out of the oven. And since some of these biscuits are going to go to the doggies next door and to my baking professor's doggie, we're going to make sure we have gloves at hand. We're going to take the same safety precautions for the doggies that we take for the people. We're going to need our cooling racks, same as we did with human cookies. I've got treat baggies for the treats that are going to go other places. We're also going to need doggy biscuit cutters. Now I have a variety of sizes for the different dogs I'm making bones for. Don't worry if you don't have doggy cookie cutters or even a rolling pin. I'll tell you how you can still make these biscuits for your dogs. We're going to need our cookie sheets. And I am going to line them with parchment paper this time because my dogs like a crunchy biscuit. Remember, if you don't want crunchy, you can use a Silpat and it'll give you a softer cookie. This is the same type of thing. The other thing is if you have your bananas, which I couldn't find at the store for my strawberry banana biscuits, I'm going to tell you how to work around that. You can use a stick blender to blend up your bananas. Or you can chop them in a food processor. You can do them in a smoothie blender or just a regular blender. It's a little better than if you just mash them by hand, but if you need to, you can mash them by hand. We're going to need our offset spatula to take our cookies off of our wire rack to put into our containers or baggies. We've got our stirring spatula. This is the kind I prefer, all one piece. You can't get anything on the inside. We're going to need a cutting board because we're going to chop some strawberries today, but you don't need to have strawberries in this recipe. Again, I will give you this recipe plus the original recipe and the variants, and a sharp knife for cutting your strawberries. Then I would say you would need to also have your peanut butter, and you're going to want a little baking spray for the spoon you're going to spoon out your peanut butter with because you don't want the peanut butter stuck to your spoon. Now, here's our recipe. The original recipe is 2.5 cups of wheat flour, 2 eggs, 2 very ripe bananas, 2.5 cups of wheat flour, 2 eggs, a half a cup of canned pumpkin, a half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a tablespoon of water as needed. I never use water in these biscuits. I use the wet ingredients like the pumpkin, the peanut butter, the banana, and I just add a little more peanut butter or other wet ingredient till I get the dough to form. I don't add any excess water. That's the actual original recipe. You can make these with any dog-safe food ingredient. If you're not sure what ingredients are safe for your dogs, you can ask your vet. Make sure, if you've never used the ingredient, that it is dog safe. Pumpkin is dog safe. Strawberries, bananas, blueberries, peanut butter. However, let's talk about using canned food or pre-made peanut butter. They now use alcohol sugar in our food, such as xylitol. It will kill your dog overnight. So if you're going to use pre-made peanut butter, canned pumpkin, be 100% sure that you have read that label and it does not say xylitol, Xylitol, or alcohol sugars. If you're worried that you can't find the peanut butter, making the peanut butter is super easy. If you live in the Texas area with an HEB, the Hill Country peanut butter still doesn't have xylitol in it. I check every time I buy it just to be sure. But if you're going to make them, it's super simple. You just get shelled peanuts or shell them yourself. Just make sure they are unsalted. Throw them in a food processor or a blender. Grind them down to a paste. If it's a little too dry to work with, you add a little olive oil or water until you get a nice peanut butter consistency. And that's all there is to it to making peanut butter. For our recipe, we're going to do strawberry banana peanut butter, my dog's favorite. So we're going to use 2.5 cups wheat flour, 2 eggs, 2 very ripe bananas. Remember I said I couldn't necessarily find the bananas because they were all super hard and unripe, not even really yellow yet. So what I did is went to the baby food section where you can get all natural food. And I got the apple banana sauce. I could have went with straight banana baby food. This is a little more volume, a little wetter, so it'll be a little more useful in the dough. Had I not been able to find decent strawberries, I could have got a strawberry one. I could have got a strawberry banana sauce and just used that. So if you can't find the fruits fresh, if you can find them frozen, you can defrost them overnight and use the frozen. Remember, those are going to be more wet than fresh though, so keep that in mind. I prefer to use the baby food than the frozen because it's not preserved in the same way that the frozen foods are. So we're going to go ahead and use baby apple and banana sauce for our bananas. We've got peanut butter. Like I said, the Hill Country does not have xylitol in it. It has the dextrose and regular sugar, so we know that it's safe for the dogs. We're going to need some cinnamon, powdered ground cinnamon, just the regular stuff. 2 eggs. Again, we have our little cup. We still want to make sure we're cracking our eggs into a separate bowl so that we don't ruin our recipe if something's wrong with the eggs. We've got our wheat flour and we've got our strawberries. So the first thing we're going to do is first wash our hands and rinse off these strawberries because we always want to rinse any fruit we use, whether it's for ourselves or for our animals. So remember not to wash your hands with any kind of scented soap, as that can get into your food, and you want to use the same precautions for your dogs that you use for your people. All right. Once we get that done, we're going to go ahead and pull the rest of our ingredients while we set our strawberries down on a paper towel so we don't make a leak everywhere. And I'm going to do just like, again, I do for the people. I'm going to prep our equipment. So we're going to go ahead and take our cookie sheets. I brought out 3. I'm not really sure how many I'm going to use. So we're going to go ahead and get those ready. When using parchment paper, you just take your square. If you have squares, or you measure it out like you would tin foil if you have a roll, just throw it on top of your pan like that. Just keep in mind it does and can move around on your pan. And again, once you're done with these, nothing has touched your pans. You just have to let them cool before you put them away. All right. Next, we're going to pull our wheat flour. And we're gonna sift it, and we're gonna do it exactly how we did our other flour. I'm actually just gonna use the spatula to flatten it on our measuring cup top, because for this, it's not as particular as a lot of recipes. Plus, I don't have a scoop for this, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the spatula to spoon it in anyway. Remember, we go back to the handle and take the flat the same way we did when we made cookies. And that's 1 cup. Now we're going to get our 2nd cup. Do it the same way. And then we're going to do our 1/2 cup. Now these are 100% human safe biscuits. You can taste them. It's basically a graham cracker, because graham crackers are cinnamon sugar and wheat flour. It's basically a graham cracker without the sugar. So they'll basically taste like a fruity graham cracker that needs to be sweetened up a little if you want to taste them before you feed them to your puppies. Now, normally we would put our flour away at this point, but we're going to be rolling out in dough, so we're going to keep it in case we need to sprinkle a little to keep our stuff from sticking, as well as in case our dough needs a little more. All right. Sift our flour out. Wheat flour is a little heavier than white flour, so it does take a little bit longer to go through. Then we're going to take our cinnamon, which we need about 1/2 teaspoon. Alrighty. I'm going to actually open this because sometimes I find it difficult to get the little thingy in through the hole that they say is for the spoon. Because my dogs like a little more cinnamon, I'm not going to be too concerned with leveling off that spoon. If you're not sure if your dogs would like the cinnamon flavor being heavier, then just make sure you level off your spoon the same way we did with the measuring cups. Now, we're going to take our spatula and we're going to stir the cinnamon into the dough. And we're going to go ahead and set that aside for a minute. Our next step would be to mash the bananas into a separate bowl. But since we're not mashing bananas, we don't have to do that. We'll just prep our little cups to make sure we can open them quickly. Now, when you mash bananas, if you've never done it, what you're looking for in your bananas are overripe. The little black spots on them, a little soft to the touch, not rotten, but overripe. And if you've ever made banana bread or seen somebody make banana bread, you want them about banana bread ready. You don't want to buy them more than the day before you're going to make your dog biscuits because they'll go bad very quickly. So we're just going to do that. If you've never used the bananas and you don't know what consistency the chopped up and mixed bananas will be, it's similar to the sauce. It's a gooey, almost starchy mixture. And then we're going to take some strawberries next, and we are going to slice them for our dog biscuits. Now, for a full recipe, I usually use 2 decent sized bananas, not small, not super large. So I'm going to kind of wing it with the sauce because we can always just add a little more flour if it's too wet. I do the same thing with the strawberries I'm going to chop up. I get somewhere around 1/2 cup to a cup of strawberries. Now, you can take these strawberries and chop them, throw them in the bowl with your bananas, and use the stick mixer as well to get a much smaller cut and some strawberry juice in there. My pups really like the big chunks of strawberry in their biscuits. They dry out while cooking. They get almost like a dried strawberry in there, which is an intense strawberry flavor. So they really like it. Now, if we were using these strawberries for other things, I would say, you know, cut the core out. I'm taking them, making sure I cut so I'm below all the stuff that is part of the top of the strawberry. Leaving me this. And then I just usually chunk them up into as small pieces as I want. When you roll them out, they'll get pressed in the dough and they'll get a little bit smaller. Just be really careful when chopping that you don't cut yourself. Now I'm going to measure them out a little. Most of the time I just chop up a hunk of strawberries and call it a day. And then with the leftover strawberries, I either bake something or just chop them up and have them with dinner, make a salad dressing. So, because you don't necessarily need the whole thing. Again, if you can't find strawberries in season and you don't want to use the frozen ones, the baby food works just fine. And it doesn't take many strawberries to make a half a cup to a cup. So we're going to go ahead and cut that end of that one off because it's a little ugly. This is also a good way you can use if you only have a couple of strawberries left over after you've made something for the people in your house to use up some leftover strawberries or leftover blueberries. Again, if it's not something that you know your dog can have, be very careful in giving it to them. You don't want to use almond butter. Almonds are not good for dogs. Macadamias are poisonous for puppies. They can't have okra. I can't remember why they can't have okra, but they can't have okra. They can't have grapes either, or raisins. So like I said, you can go online. There's a VetMD type site that you can ask questions or look for information on as well. If you Google the online vets, you can Google a lot of sources to find out if it's safe, if a food item is safe for dogs. But do your research on the site, and if you're not sure, give your vet's office a call. You know, ask them to just get back to you, let you know if this food item is safe to use in making dog food or dog biscuits. I know because I feed my dogs some raw food to supplement their dog food. So you have to be very careful with what you give them. Now that's half a cup of strawberries right into the flour mixture because I'm not squishing them up. Like I said, if you want them all squished up and smaller, what you're going to want to do is chop them up like we just did and put them in the bowl with the squished up banana. And then use your blender, stick blender to do it, or chop your strawberries up and put them into your smoothie blender or your regular blender or your food processor with the chopped up banana. All right, we're going to get a little more strawberries than that. My dogs like a little fruitiness to theirs. Don't want to use too many because we also have the banana and applesauce to put in. And strawberries are very wet, so they will add moisture to your dough. All right, I'm going to do about 3/4 of a cup. Like I said, you with your fruit, you can be a little generous with your portions. Put this out of the way. Alrighty, so back to our bowl. Let's crack our eggs in. Remember, we want to crack our egg into a separate bowl and make sure that our egg is healthy, has no defects in it. Drop it in our bowl. Do the same with the second. Now, normally I would have started the oven a little bit prior to this, but because we have to roll and cut, I usually wait till I'm at about this point in the recipe, but you can start your oven a little bit earlier if you want to. You can start it a little bit later at this point if you want to. I already have my oven light on so I can see them when they're cooking and I don't have to keep opening the stove. And these biscuits cook for somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes, and we'll go over why there's a variation at 350. This recipe along with the original recipe will be attached at the bottom. All right, now we're gonna add the peanut butter. Now, you may or may not want to take your spray this, it'll slide right out. You do that with honey as well. I'm going to go ahead and do that over the sink so I don't make a mess. And then you take a piece of paper towel like we did for the cookie scoop and just wipe it out a little bit so you don't have any liquid or excess going into your peanut butter. Like I said, if you're using a honey product as well, you want to spray your scoops. Now, it calls for 2 tablespoons. Again, sometimes if my dough's not wet enough, I will add more peanut butter, but I usually start with 3 tablespoons. My dogs love peanut butter, and after all, this is for them, so we do it the way they like it. So I'm just going to set the peanut butter off to the side in case I need it again. And here's our winging it part today, because when you don't have the bananas and you're using some kind of applesauce or some kind of baby food, you sort of have to mix it in, see where you are, and go from that. You know, I don't have any little ones in the house, so whatever's left over the dogs can have, because it's just bananas, apples, and a little lemon juice in there to keep it from turning brown, because it has an apple or banana and apple in it. So let's put our first one in, and we're going to give this a good stir and see how our dough comes along. You notice we're not using any kind of blender. You could throw this in your stand mixer and let it mix that way, or use your hand mixer. This doesn't take very long, and it's not very difficult to stir up. Plus, you don't know how much liquid you need in here until you get going. So it's a lot easier to add stuff when you're doing it by hand. You get a better feel for the dough. So you just sort of mush it around, get a good mix before you add the rest of any liquid banana or... Now, if you don't want to add more peanut butter, you don't want to add more banana, you don't want to add more pumpkin if you're doing pumpkin. My dogs love the pumpkin peanut butter also. You can add water or a little olive oil right to it to wet it up, to make it a little softer. So we're going to see where we're going to go with this and see how well liquid it is before we see if we need to add anything. So that was 8 ounces of the banana applesauce that went in there. So a part of what will decide how much of the other liquid you need is how wet your fruit is, the humidity at the current day, how liquid, how soft your peanut butter is. If you make it at home, sometimes it's not as soft as the peanut butter. If you've bought organic peanut butter before, you know it gets a little bit of an oil on top from it. So sometimes that'll make a difference. So your levels can be determined by your environment as well. It's getting hard to stir, so we're going to just clean off our spatula and put it out of the way, and by hand we go. So again, if you have a cut or anything, or long nails or nails done at the salon, the fake nails, the acrylic nails, you're going to want to cover that because it's going to get all under your fingers and you're not going to be able to get it out. You shouldn't have any jewelry on when you're mixing dough, because one, it'll get in the jewelry, and any dirt in your jewelry will get in the dough. This dough is a pretty good consistency. Once I get it fully mixed, we're probably going to need a little flour. Now when your dough's a little wet and sticky and you're thinking, oh, that's going to stick to everything, that's okay. Because what we want is then when we add the flour to the counter and the flour on top to roll it, we won't end up with over-floured doggy cookie dough. You can see the consistency is a little sticky. So we are going to need more flour, but we're going to do that while we're rolling it. Since I have a clean area, like I said, cleaned down with my vinegar, I'm going to go ahead and pull my dough out onto my counter. Make sure you get all the dough out and set this bowl out of our way. And we're going to to take a little flour and we're going to sprinkle it around. And because our dough is a little sticky, I put a little bit more flour. If our dough was just not quite sticky, as you'll see it when we're rolling it, then I would have put less flour down, just enough for it to not stick. I put a little flour on my hands and rub them together like this, and it rolls the dough that was stuck to my hands off. I will then take a little flour and run it over my rolling pin. All right, so let's take a chunk of dough. Not too big, not too small. What I'm going to do is press it down on that side into the flour, press it down on this side into the flour, like I said, because we left that dough nice and sticky. And then I'm going to fold it, make sure we don't lose any strawberries, and give it a quick run through with this flour. When it's nice and solid and it holds together so that you can poke it and not come away with it on your fingers, we're ready to roll that. I'm going to give it a good press down with my hands. Now, how thick you roll the dough will affect your cooking time. What products you have in your dough will affect your cooking time. How crispy you want them will be determined by your cooking time. We're going to put them in the middle rack just like we did human cookies. And then we're going to cook them till they're essentially golden brown texture on top. So we're going to take our rolling pin, hands here at the ends. If you don't have one with handles, if you have handles, use your handles. You roll in one direction, roll in the other. Now you may get some tearing because of the chunks of fruit. That's okay. Take your little cutters, take the sharp side. You'll have a rounded side and a sharp side. Take your sharp side, press straight down. You don't want to wiggle, it compresses your dough. Go through, cut out your little biscuits. Now, you don't want biscuits this size on a tray with biscuits this size because these will take longer to cook. So I'm going to do my first tray with the two smaller sizes and the next tray with the larger sizes. Peel up your excess dough, leaving your biscuits sitting. Being careful not to rip your little doggy biscuits. Just pick them up, place them on the tray, same way we did with the people cookies. These won't spread, so I'll show you that you can put them right on, about yay far apart. You just settle them on that cookie sheet. And then just like rolling out Christmas cookies, we're gonna keep going literally until we fill the sheet, and then we'll put them in and keep going. You may start to see some stickage, you may feel some dampness where a strawberry got pushed down. Just add a little flour after you scrape the dough. How many you'll get on a sheet is determined by what size your cookies are. Now, we're gonna get a little more cookie dough. Make sure we don't lose all our strawberries. Add a little more flour because this particular dough didn't get any extra yet. I can just smell the strawberries and the banana or the peanut butter. It smells like a good peanut butter cookie. And once we get that again to that texture we wanted, where you can mold it into a ball and push it, it's ready to roll. Now, if you don't have a rolling pin and you're going to do this, you want to get your dough to that texture right from the get-go. What do you do if you don't have doggy biscuit cookie cutters? You roll your biscuits out and you cut your doggy cookies with your regular cookie cutters you have at home. Nobody said your dog biscuits have to be dog biscuit shaped. I try to keep them fairly thin, anywhere between 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch, depending on the size of the dog, depending on what kind of treat I'm making it for. And you can measure that out. If you're not good at keeping your dough even when you roll it, because you want to keep it this side the same height as this side, the same height as this side, you can take barbecue skewers, lay them here, and it will not allow you to go past them. So and then move them over here and go the other way. It will keep you at a stable height. So now you're thinking, well, what if I don't have a rolling pin and I want to make dog cookies? Well, it's pretty simple. You take it, you get the dough to the rolling consistency, roll it into a log, put it on saran wrap, roll the log, throw it in the fridge for probably about an hour at least, till it's firm enough that you'll be able to slice it with a knife. And then you just slice it into little circles, the same kind you would get when you buy the roll cookies in the supermarket in the tube, and you just peel the tube off and slice them up and put them on a pan. One thing to keep in mind though, if you use the refrigerator method and cut your cookies, you're going to take a little bit longer to cook because they're going to be chilly. And that's no big deal. Just keep in mind it will take a little bit longer to cook. Now I'm going to cook these like I do my human cookies, one batch at a time on that middle rack. But you can, like I said before, add a second rack, but the different racks will have different cooking times. All right. Scrape up our little bit of wet. Throw a little bit down. Add a little more dough. Get it to the right consistency. And once you've used all your fresh dough, you won't need to bring it to consistency to roll it. I prefer to do it this way because this way, when I'm using the flour on my counter and I'm using my flour to roll, I'm not adding too much flour to the dough so that you get a floury dough that if it was for you, you wouldn't want to eat if it tasted like cooked flour. So if you do take it to rolling consistency before you take it out of the bowl, what you want to do is use a lot less flour. All right. Get the last of these little biscuits cut. Do one. Alrighty. Now I'm going to peel out these sides because this one has to go in to the oven. And if they stick a little, you can get a spatula to pick them up. If they get ruined, you just throw your dough back in. If they get a little unshapely, you can reshape the little corner with your finger. The strawberries can cause an issue. If you've cut on a strawberry, sometimes you have to sort of fuss it back together yourself. Your dogs will not care if it's a slightly misshapen biscuit, although I try not to have any misshapen ones. All right, let's take our biscuits. Once again, we're going to take them. You see the spacing. We're going to go ahead and take them and pop them in the oven. Middle rack, light on so we don't have to keep opening it. And we're going to set it to the smallest number. So we're going to start a 20-minute timer because it's 20 to 40 minutes. But we want to check them right off the bat because we're not sure how long they're going to take till we get the first batch going. All right, let's do a little bit of a bigger one. We're going to do some big ones for the big dogs. All right, and they're just going to lay out the same way. And you just keep going until you end. Let me grab my spatula again. You get enough stuff that, it's giving you a hard time, you can get your spatula and give it a rub. And it'll help you get that off of there. All right, a little more flour. And remember, the strawberries, as you work with them, do add moisture, and the more they get pushed, a little bit more moisture comes out of them. So you're gonna find where you feel like it's a little wet or why is it still sticking. If you don't have strawberries in it, you generally won't, or blueberries are the same issue. That's why you sometimes come across a little more moisture than you had 5 minutes ago, because you're essentially pressing the fruit. We're going to roll out a bigger square because I'm going to do the big biscuits. Now, you cannot keep these the same way you would keep biscuits you buy from the store. These have no preservatives of any sort in them. So they don't keep very long outside of the freezer, just a couple of days. So you're going to want to freeze them. A little bit of that wax paper I showed you in an airtight container. Throw them in your freezer. Take them out as needed. You don't even have to take them out to use them, especially in the summer. My dogs like when I leave the biscuits in the freezer and then give them to them straight from the freezer. It's a nice cooling treat. Another cooling treat that you can make super simple for the dogs is go to the dollar store, get one of those old fashioned little square ice cubes where the ice cubes are about that big and square. You mix some strawberries, some bananas, some blueberry, whatever your dog likes. You can even put whole pieces in and put them in mix them in a little bit of Greek yogurt and go ahead and fill those ice cube trays with it, and your dogs get a little bit of a frozen yogurt treat, frozen ice cream treat that they can have. Another way you can do that is you mush up the banana, mush up the strawberry with a blender, and you can freeze them that way, and they get a little doggy treat. And again, we want to go straight down so we're not compressing our dog biscuits so that they stay together nicely. Not as important in this recipe as in some, but if you're making human biscuits, you know, like for biscuits and gravy or for your breakfast sandwich, you most certainly don't want to compress your dough. You want to go straight down because it won't rise up as nice if you smush it together. We're going to make a couple of really big ones, and they're going to go on the tray with the medium big ones. I'm going to need 3 of these because I have 3 hunkin' big dogs. Or 4 because my history professor, her dog that I'm going to give some of these to, is also a big dog. All right. And again, you want to go with the size of your dog. My big dogs love when I give them little treats, so sometimes I make them all little, because when I give them the little, like, small dog size treats, they can have them more often. So in the summer, I often make all treats this size for my giant dogs, and then they can get a biscuit, you know, every day till I run out of them. Now, when you get to the end, you can do the other thing you can do if you don't have a rolling pin, or even if you have a rolling pin, but you really just don't want to go through all the time of rolling out your dough, cutting them, and all that business. You can take your dough, get it to the rolling consistency, pull off little chunks, roll them in your hand like you would a meatball, and then put them on the tray and press them flat with a couple fingers and just make them individually that way. If you're super creative, you can make a little stencil, and you can take a sharp knife and cut whatever shape you want out of the dough. Like if it's your dog's birthday and he's going to be 5, you can cut out a number 5. You can just get creative with your shapes if you want. And these make a great little gift for a friend's dog if they have a dog. I'm sure if you're a cat person out there, or you know a cat person out there, I'm sure there are cat treat recipes as well. I don't have cats, so I don't have one. But if you do have both a cat and a dog, and you're watching this and you're thinking, well, this is great, I would love to make something for the kitties, look around, see what you can find, because I'm sure that there are cat treat recipes out there. And I'm sure your cats would appreciate a homemade treat just as much as a dog would. All right, we've got those big ones. I'm going to make a couple more little ones. I'm going to get 3 trays simply because I have the big biscuits. If I would have done all smaller biscuits, I probably only would have needed 2 trays. But that's why I said in the first video, And I'll say again, always get out one more cookie sheet than you think you're gonna need and have it prepped and ready to go. Because if I didn't, I'd have to run out to the garage and get another cookie sheet, get another parchment square, get that set up before I could finish cutting my cookies. So, all right. Give it a nice little pat. And we're gonna cut a little, we're gonna go with the medium small and cut a few more treats out of that. And we got a little extra space. We'll bring in the smaller one and we'll cut through. Alrighty. And it's really simple. You just carefully lift them up. Like I said, if it gets a little sticky because of the fruit and you get a little weird edge like this, or if you're like me and sometimes forget and pinch the end a little, you can just take your fingers and kind of round it back out just like that. Now, if I'm giving them away and I have a little smushy one, I keep the smushy ones for my dogs and give away the perfectly formed biscuits. But not your dog or anybody else's is won't care if it's smushy. I just like them to be perfect if I can make them perfect. You know, if your dog likes to chase cats, you can make cat-shaped biscuits. You can make bird-shaped biscuits. My guys like the dog biscuit shape because they know exactly that these are their cookies based on the shape. Then when you get sort of to the end, you're not really going to have enough to roll out. So you can just make a little ball in your hand, like you're making a giant meatball. Make sure you have a clean spot on your counter with a little bit of flour down. Give it a good press as flat as possible. And if it's big enough, once you flatten it out, use your cookie cutter. Go ahead and get your cookie out. And repeat until you run out of dough. That's a sort of a sad little biscuit, but it's the end, so we take what we can get. And then on the last one, I'm going to do just like I told you you would do if you didn't feel like rolling it out, didn't have a rolling pin, didn't want to wait the hour for it to harden in the fridge. You roll it just like a meatball, cup one hand cupped on top, so you get a nice little ball, and then just flatten it with your fingers. And you get one round cookie. This will be for my dogs. Set that aside. This is one of those recipes where you can go ahead and leave the tray on top of your stove. You don't have to worry about it warming it. All right, I will be back with you as soon as we're ready to, okay, we're just about ready to check our biscuits on the 20-minute mark. I don't feel like they're gonna be done. I can smell them just starting to smell peanut buttery, but I wanna show you what I'm looking at so you can gauge where your cookies are in the process after 20 minutes. So since we have about 18 seconds left, we'll go ahead and check them. Now the thing about the wheat biscuits is they don't change in color that much. So you're gonna wanna look at them. These are getting slightly done. These smaller ones, you can see they push back a little. They should feel a little firm. They move fairly easy. But my dogs like a little crispier, and you can still, when you push on them, they're still a little doughy. So I'm gonna go ahead with about another 7 to 10 minutes. Now for the bigger biscuits, I can tell you right off the bat, I'm gonna start those at 30 minutes because they're so much bigger. In the meantime, while I was gone, I was cleaning up and putting stuff away, which is always a good way to do it. Now I'm going to open my little treat bags and show you what we're going to put the biscuits in today. We're going to go ahead, because I'm giving them to somebody else. I want to say from Amazon, these little just food safe treat bags. You can do the plastic ones too. You can do a little cardboard box. I like these, unless it's for a special occasion, because you can just fold down the top, tape it, staple it, just leave it folded depending on how long it'll be. If you're not going to see the person right away, put them in your fridge. So again, let's talk about keeping these. These don't have preservatives, so they need to go in the fridge, especially because you have fresh fruit in them. So only keep in the fridge for a couple days. I suggest you keep out what you're going to give your dog that day. Freeze them. You can take them out and let them thaw. They don't take long to thaw. And give them to your dog, or you can give it to them cold. But like I said, if you're going to give them to somebody else, make sure they know that they can't just set them aside and let them sit, because, again, there's no preservatives in them. I will link the products that you've seen me use today that I haven't used before in the bottom, as well as the link for the cleaning strength vinegar. I mix mine 2 vinegar parts to 1 water. I want a slightly sharp vinegar smell, kind of like your counter smells like salad for a minute. And it dissipates very quickly. You can actually clean just about everything in your house with the vinegar solution, including windows, mirrors, bathtubs, sinks. I clean everything with it, especially food areas. But I have large dogs. They can get their dirty feet up on everything. They can reach up on counters. So not only do I want to be able to sanitize my counters literally right before I use them if they put a foot up, but if they put their face up there, I don't want them to put their face up after I wipe it and have it be a chemical. So that's why I've switched to using only the vinegar. There are store-bought cleaning agents. There's the orange one that is food safe as well. Vinegar and water, there's no other ingredients, so I prefer that. Again, the links for that stuff will be in the bottom. If you have any comments, please drop them in. If you have any questions, again, drop them in the comments. I will get to them as quickly as possible. If you make the biscuits, drop us a picture and tell us how your dog liked them. We're just getting close to the mark where we're going to pull these biscuits out so I can show you what they look like when they come out of the oven. And then we'll let them cool the same as we do regular cookies. We put them on our wire rack. The same way we do with regular cookies, we let them cool. You almost have to watch these a little closer than human cookies with your pets, because once they know this is their food that they think is human food because they see you making it, they're a little more excited about them. I know my dogs know the smell of it. They know the smell of the cinnamon and the peanut butter. In fact, I made cinnamon donuts the other day and they were going nuts. They thought I was making biscuits for them because they smelled the cinnamon. So you're going to want to keep a good eye or put them up out of reach while they're cooling so they don't get them and either gorge on them or burn their little mouths on hot cookies, because nobody wants that. Again, I want to make sure I stress, if you're unsure about an ingredient you want to use in your dog biscuit, please check with your vet. Never just give them something you're not sure about, because some human foods are fatal to dogs. The smaller the dog, the less it takes to injure them. Like I said, off the top of my head, I know no garlic, no onion, no grapes, raisins, okra, almonds, macadamia nuts are super lethal. Those are just the ones that came to me off the top of my head. Again, if you're going to use store-bought pumpkin, canned pumpkin, or store-bought peanut butter, make sure there's no xylitol or alcohol sugar in it. Make sure you see regular sugar or a sucrose or dextrose or glucose type sugar in there, not the other. I think that's pretty much it for their safety of their ingredients. If you don't want to use canned pumpkin, but you're not really sure what to do with your pumpkin, when you go to the store, and you can really only do this during pumpkin season, so you'd have to make it and freeze it or can it if you know how to can. I'm not a canner, so, but there are plenty of videos out on YouTube for canning. During pumpkin season, you go to the store, you get roasting pumpkins. By the way, you can use spaghetti squash, acorn, or butternut squash as well instead of pumpkin, so you can do it outside of pumpkin season as well. I know my dogs like the acorn squash. Or, I'm sorry, the butternut squash. They haven't had the acorn. I know a lot of dogs like the spaghetti squash. But you take it, cut it in half, throw a little olive oil on your pan, throw a little Silpat, tin foil, parchment paper on your roasting pan, roast it. I did mine at like 375 degrees, 400 degrees. You can look it up on the web or wing it like I did. When it's cool enough to touch after, let it roast until it's soft, fork soft, or you can put the fork in and it goes through nice and soft. As soon as it's cool enough to touch, scoop out the center. If it's not fine enough, if it's a little pulley, little thicker than you want, you can mix it with a blender or a food processor and chop it down so you get that puree texture. You know, depends on what your dog's like or what you want to give them. Sweet potatoes, I'm pretty sure you can give them, but I'm not positive, so I would look that up. But that seems like if that's safe for dogs, it would be a good alternative. And something you might have in your house. But I would double check on that because dogs shouldn't eat too many potatoes. All right, let's check the biscuits. We've got that extra 10 minutes on. So let's go ahead and pull the biscuits. Now you'll see how much they're sliding a little easier when I'm just talking to you. You can feel they're a little firmer. If you turn them over, you can see they're a little brown. Ow, those are hot. I'm going to put them up on the spare rack here. If you hold that too long, it gets a little hot. And I'm going to pop in our other biscuits. Now, like I said, these are the bigger biscuits, the bigger cuts, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the same 30 minutes it took the smaller ones to cook. And I'll get back with you when we have biscuits to put in our little baggie so you can see them when they've cooled down. And you already know how to separate them from the pan onto the cooling rack, the same way we did in our other video with the human cookies. But I'll show you again real quick before we do anything else. Now I'm going to put these on a hot pad right here. We're going to put our little, okay, we're going to be really careful not to touch other than the one I've already touched, which is this one. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the back corner so I know which one is for my dogs. And we're going to go ahead and scoop them up because I can't, oh, there it is. I'm going to take our little extra finger that we cut from our glove, put it on our finger. I like to this one because that's what I want to touch with. So that when we are touching the biscuit that's not going back in the oven, we're touching it with the covered finger. So you just slip your spatula up under, use your covered finger to guide your biscuit. These are a little warm still, but these are a pretty firm biscuit when they come out, so they don't have to cool too much. Just in the time I was talking to you, they were sturdy enough in their cool to move them. You can leave them a good 5 minutes so they're not warm to your finger's touch. If you're not sensitive to the heat like me, this isn't too warm for me. Some people are a little bit more sensitive to the heat, but if you're not like me, then you can do it a little earlier with these guys because unlike the soft chocolate chip cookies from the last video, these won't break up on you even though they're still a little bit warm. All right. So we're going to let those cool. We're going to let our other biscuits cook, and I'll get back with you when it's time to bag them up. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes. These are nice and cool. Again, this one's going to be for my family, so we're going to put that back there with those because I touched it to check. Now I'm going to put my glove on. I am terminally right-handed, so I'm going to go glove on my right hand, or I will forget and just start touching biscuits. And we're going to load up our treat bag for the dogs next door. All right, so we're just going to open our baggie and stack in. They have 2 dogs, so I'm going to do 4 of each size biscuit. So they each get 2 of those. And then we have a nice set of 3. All right. That is for our girls next door. Now, like I said, with these kind of treat bags, You can just fold them. Now I'm going to take these right next door later today, so I don't have to worry about that. You can use stickers too, where you just put a little sticker right here and hold it closed if you're going to be a long time. Now I'm just going to set these aside. So now we're just waiting for the rest of the biscuits to be finished, and I'll package them up when they cool, about the same 15-20 minutes sitting out. They should be good enough to package. If you're unsure, let them cool a little bit longer. All right, like I said, if you have any comments, you have any questions about anything, drop them in the comments. Our next month's video is going to be bread making. I'm going to teach you the easiest loaf of bread you'll ever make. That is a direct quote from my baking professor, Miss Elke Jensen. And it's very simple. You need very few tools to do it properly, and I'll give you examples of what different things you can use and different things you can do with the bread. And it's a great starter bread, a great way to learn to make your own bread. I just want to also say thank you to For the Fans Media, my daughter CSI Haley, who you may have heard on Girls Pod, as well as the new Gridiron Girls, and Mark for giving me a place to put my videos up. And I'll see you next month.